actually a while ago, she said, hey, would you be willing, or she was saying, hey, I always need mustard seed speakers. And I was like, well, I could talk. I mean, I did just spend 2 years on the reservation, and it was quite an experience, both service-wise as well as just from personal faith-wise and spirituality, and in terms of growing as an individual. It was quite an experience. So I hope to just kind of transmit some of that information and kind of share with you today. It's a little bit more of an experience talk versus I've been to a couple of these and they're a little more intellectual, high, like let's talk about, it's like Father Sternberg was here talking about, like all that stuff. Then we had, I can't even remember your name already. Sorry, Jeff. Okay, we had talking, which is awesome, the historicity of the Bible and all this stuff, which is so cool in the Old Testament. So then you get me come in and I'm like, walk in beauty. It's like, I'm not a hippie, I promise. So to start off, so 2 years in the high desert with the DeMarais. That's how they refer to themselves, the DeMarais. In their language, the Navajo people. But to start, I wanted to just kind of share with you, this is it's used as the closing prayer to the Navajo Way blessing ceremony. So again, why did I choose walk in beauty? Well, that's actually what they call the Navajo Way. A phrase that kind of sums it up in 3 words for us. And this is kind of just a prayer that we say. So you can see it right there. In beauty I walk, with beauty before me I walk, with beauty behind me I walk, with beauty above me I walk, with beauty around me I walk. It has become beauty again, it has become beauty again. And then usually it'll repeat over again. And the first time that I heard anybody mention of this when I was down there, I immediately thought of the time actually when I was at the National Catholic Youth Conference. I don't know if you've ever heard of it or been to it. It's a national youth conference for high school youth that they bring in 20,000 high school Catholic youth. I went to it in Indianapolis, Columbus, and Atlanta, 2 times, my sophomore and senior year of high school. And the MC, Christ, she sang the song, Christ before me, Christ behind me, Christ all around me. And I was like, oh my gosh, you just exchanged beauty with Christ. It's the same thing, And so, I initially, right away, that's what I was thinking about. So, start off with that. Now, just for the sake of sharing some information, does anybody know anything about the Navajo people? Anything? I mean, maybe a little bit. Some people might know a little bit. Okay? I'm not going to say I know a lot, but I thought it would be kind of fun to just share with you a little bit of their culture that I actually gathered from being down there, but also just researching myself. So, to start off with, the brief account of their creation story. It's kind of cool. So I'm just going to share with you a little bit about it. It's a little bit of reading, so bear with me, and then I'll kind of go on from there. So, the basic outline of their creation story is these worlds. In the first world, okay, there was the holy wind being created, the mist of lights which arose through the darkness to animate and bring purpose to the myriad, or the holy people. Supernatural and sacred in the different 3 lower worlds. All these things were spiritually created in the time before the earth existed. And the physical aspect of humans did not exist yet, but the spiritual did. So this is that first world. They journeyed to the second world, which was inhabited by various blue-gray furred mammals and various birds, including blue swallows. So as you can see, it kind of starts here and moves in this direction. The beings from the first world offended Swallow Chief, and they were asked to leave. First man created a wand of jet. So again, first man spiritual. This is not, again, first man as human yet. Created a wand of jet and other materials to allow the people to walk up it into the next world through an opening in the south. So start at the east to the south. In the third world, there were 2 rivers that formed across and the sacred mountains, but there was still no sun. More animal people lived here too. This time it was not discord among the people that drove them away, but a great flood. Great flood. Where have we heard that before? When Coyote stole, caused by, I'm going to butcher the name, Tiglath-Pileser, which is kind of like water woman. It was the water, when Coyote stole her tribe. The coyote is kind of a very mystical being in Navajo culture. It's constantly referred to. The coyote is kind of this mischief character. It's an interesting thing. That's a separate talk. But anyways, so when the people arrived into the fourth world, It was covered in water. There were monsters living there. The sacred mountains were reformed from soil this time, taken from the original mountains in the second one. First man and first woman, and the holy people created the sun, moon, seasons, and stars. It was here that true death came into existence, via coyote, tossing a stone into a lake and declaring that if it sank, then the dead would go back to the previous world. The first human was born in the fourth world, who in turn gives birth to the hero twins, and then the twins have many adventures in which they help to get rid of the world of various monsters. Multiple batches of modern humans were created a number of times. That's interesting. Modern batches. Modern humans were created a number of times in the fourth world, and the DeMarais gave them. Okay, so you've got this creation story, which actually has some interesting parallels to even some of Genesis. If you could, I mean, very vague, but like at the same time it does. So I wanted to share that with you, and then also to kind of go on into it, Navajo belief in a nutshell. Okay, the Navajo perceive the universe as an all-inclusive whole, in which everything has its own place and unique and beneficial relationship to all living things. I think a lot of us have heard this. Hate to say it, but in the stereotypical, maybe what we would hear just of Native Americans in general, this harmony with the universe. But really, that is what it is all about for the Navajo. Okay, everything is sacred. The all-inclusive nature of the universe means that all forces are integrated, good and evil, natural and supernatural, male and female, into a state of balance and harmony expressed by the word hojo, which is beauty. Okay, so keep on thinking of that beauty as I keep going here. Navajo interactions with this powerful environment are characterized by a strong sense of connectedness to and respect for all living things. Okay? So there's this inner web. Then we move on to religion. There was an interesting time when I was teaching 6th grade last year. The principal of the high school her husband came in and spoke to us kind of just about the culture, to give us, the teachers, a little bit of background for all of us. And he talked about this, and it stuck with me from the moment he said it. And what he said was, for the Navajo, religion is not a separate entity to be believed in or subscribed to. It is ever present. It's no more separated from the traditional Navajo's daily life than eating, breathing, sleeping, or the ground he walks on. Okay, so it's their way of life. It's not this religion. And it was interesting in one of these. One of the sources that I found, they were saying that for decades there were, these Western Europeans coming and living, or were among the Navajos and didn't even think that they had any sort of worship because they didn't recognize it as separate from the daily life. It was just intermingled. And I remember him saying, it's not like a religion. This is going back to now present day when my principal's husband was talking, our culture, our spirituality is not about something separate from daily life. And I'm like, oh, neither is Catholicism. It's like, we actually have a way of life too. But it's interesting to see how some people kind of distinguish religion from this, and the fact that the Navajo have this beautiful thing in the sense of it's our way of life. Everything is this interconnectedness. Okay, and that's kind of where the phrase "walk in beauty" comes into their culture, their belief, and where it all stems from. The actual phrase is often quoted, like I said, as representing the essence of the Navajo philosophy. Okay. Now, an extreme or kind of crude, rough translation of the phrase, you kind of have to understand, first of all, the word hojo, which at the end you can see it there. There are a number of accents that are missing there. I'm not quite tech savvy enough to know how to put those in. Okay, so, but a firm understanding needs you to actually understand, first of all, that hojo is the central idea in Navajo thinking, but it means much more than outward appearance. It means order, harmony, blessedness, pleasantness, everything that is good, not evil. Everything that is favorable to mankind, that's being the overall goal to which everyone and everything should strive. So it's this ultimate, this is what you're doing, hojo, and what's really, it's a really neat thing, I'll kind of touch on this later, is there are a number of names of the children that I taught. Like one of the names of her, Najanama was her name, with the hojo built right into her name. There are these beautiful names too that I came across. Yeah, I gotta stay on topic because I just get off. Okay, so we got this hojo, and then the second part It's kind of, it literally means, you know, towards the normal completion of life. So that's like, so you go also reach an old age by living in harmony with the universe is essentially what the phrase means. Which is, if you think about it, if you look at walk in beauty, we wouldn't naturally gravitate towards that translation. Reach an old age by living in harmony with the universe. You know, it kind of, so to keep that in mind, that's sort of the essence of the Navajo culture and their beliefs. So, keeping that in mind, I'm going to shift focus here. Well, first of all, if you don't mind, I'm going to interject questions right now. Are there any questions on anything I just kind of said right there? So just to keep in mind this walk in beauty as I move forward now into my own experience, I'm going to throw something else in there. Good? We good to go? On the same page? Cool. Alright. So, now, switching. Truth, goodness, and beauty. We've heard those before, right? Hope so. Where do we start? Do we start with truth? Do we start with goodness? Do we start with beauty? What's more important? Are they equal? Obviously, you know, they're intertwined and all that thing. But where do we start? I was listening to an interesting podcast. I'm glad Father Mark's here because I'm going to throw another thing in there for Catholic stuff you should know. This podcast with guys out of seminarians. They were originally seminarians, now they're priests, out of Denver. Does anybody know Catholic stuff you know podcast? Okay. This podcast that came out was called Pilgrimage to Beauty, and it came out in this last April, so Holy Week. I believe it was, yeah, right before Holy, kind of right when Holy Week was beginning. And I went back, and as soon as I told Kelly I was going to do this talk, I was like, oh, I'm going to go back and refer back to that. But I couldn't remember. I just remember being struck by it so much at that time. Because I was in Arizona, and it just made sense. So I went back this last weekend and listened to it again and took notes this time. So to kind of take what I just showed you about the culture, and now shifting it into, okay, this is a Catholic podcast, so now we're talking about our faith, you know. Some interesting points. So the Pilgrimage to Beauty, what they did was they took a number of college students and they took them on a pilgrimage to Switzerland to go hiking, or kind of hiking up the mountains in the Swiss Alps. And that was, you know, really all they were doing. They went up and they went up into these little lodges on the side of the Alps, and that's what they did for 2 weeks. And they started off the podcast this way, and they said, everyone was kind of like, what are you doing? Like, what, are you just taking people there for fun? You know, like, is there something good that's coming from this? What's the point? You know, kind of stuff. And what was awesome was then hearing them talk about how their point, they literally titled it Pilgrimage to Beauty, because they said, what if we start with beauty? And sometimes we kind of forget this, and we want to throw in with, sometimes in our faith, like all our Christian faiths in general, sometimes truths are thrown out at people and those kind of things, and people aren't quite ready for it. And they need to experience this beauty, this overarching love first in order to be willing to accept those as well as they can. So they talked about, just right away from the beginning, this idea of starting with beauty. And they kind of threw out some of these. Here we go, let's start with beauty. Now we're going to get into some of the pictures. Okay. Here's some of the pictures already, and I'll touch base on those. And here's some quotes from it. Beauty. When you see it, it makes you want to change your life. Beauty draws you out of yourself. It makes you want to share with others. When you behold beauty, you encounter a presence. And they talked about, one of the stories was Father John, one of the main guys of it. He said one of the best parts, and really the point of the whole pilgrimage, he's like, we finally got it. When one night I went outside, we're on this little lodge on the side of a mountain, and we go outside, and there are 4 guys, you know, he's like college-age guys, all wearing the North Face, all these like, kind of uppity guys who are probably had nothing too bad gone wrong with their life, you know, kind of stuff, but they're just living it and loving it, and they're standing there. He's like, I went out there, and they're all just staring. And he said, I kind of like was looking down, and I looked up, and right there, he said there was, you know, the full moon. He's got the snow-capped mountains all around you, these 19, 20,000 foot mountains, he said. And then below them was actually the clouds, you know, down here. And he said that it was all reflecting off. He said that was it. He's like, no one talked for 5 minutes. He said we went out there, no one was on their phone, texting their girlfriend back home, marry somebody, or text, that kind of stuff. Everyone was there, and he said that was exactly what we were going for. He said this idea of we were taken aback by this beauty, by this absolute beauty of creation, this love of God in it, and the fact that we couldn't even do anything but just stand there, and we were ready. And I just thought that was really cool, first of all, because I know I've experienced some of the things, which I'll share with you in a little bit. But then he went on to kind of talk about just this idea, like I said, beauty draws us out of ourselves. And he said, this is it, this is all I want. This was the promise of Christ, the revelation of God. He is the fullness of beauty. In every moment of every day, you can encounter the beauty of God, just like we did that night. This is him talking. And actually receive the content and meaning of what he desires to give to you. I was like, whoa, that's quite a phrase. When you're open like that, you actually are open then fully to receiving the full content and meaning of what is going on in your life when you're arrested by it and let it overtake you. The other guy then shared, one last thing before I go on, shared a second thing which was a little simpler when he was back in Denver. He said it was Lent, this is Holy Week, and he's like, I decided for Lent to be a good idea for me to take walks. So he said, I was going for a walk one day and I was, really upset, or it's been a rough time with classes, with everything. And he said, I was going along and then all of a sudden, he's like, I looked up and I was like, oh my gosh, it's green. Spring has come. He's like, the hyacinths, like flowers? Is that how you say it?
Hyacinth.
I wrote it down. I put the pronunciation. But the hyacinths, he's like, we're out, and they're my favorite flower. And he said, it immediately arrested me, drew me out of myself, and said, this is Father Nathan now, is the guy. He's like, Nathan, it doesn't matter. Any of this stuff doesn't matter. He's like, and I thanked God that there's someone out there who believes in gardening and planted that seed in the dark earth, before the winter, hoping it would make it through the winter. He said, and at that point, I believed that God could draw good out of suffering. He's like, that is exactly, again, relating it back to this pilgrimage, what we want. And so, kind of going on from that, then they said, this is what our three goals were. We wanted to encounter beauty in creation on this pilgrimage. We wanted to encounter beauty in friendship. And then finally, to encounter beauty in suffering. These ideas. So, naturally, I'm going to now shift. I'm going to share with you a little bit of how my last 2 years, I was encountering beauty in creation, beauty in friendship, and beauty in suffering. Are we good to go? So now we're going to that was kind of the more talking, serious kind of thing. And now we're going to go into a little bit more like, okay, the res. Okay? So, we're switching. So, if you don't know kind of where it is, I don't know if I would have been able to say before I looked it up, where the Navajo reservation was. But here we are, in the Four Corners area. Okay, so you're in the northeast Arizona, a little bit of northwest New Mexico, and then Colorado and Utah. So it actually is about the size of the state of West Virginia. It's the largest land area reservation in the United States. Okay, so here's a little zoomed in version. And where I was Window Rock. If you hear me say we every once in a while, I said I wouldn't point her out too much, but my fiance is here in the back, and she was there with me the last 2 years. So, but yes, we were right here in Window Rock, and Fort Defiance is right next door. Okay, so this is actually the capital of the reservation, which is where we were. So interesting that the capital's on the edge of it. Usually it's in the center, but anyways, okay. So, the res. Okay, Hosea 2:14. Now this is the church that we would go to on a regular Sunday. It's a little mission church. Franciscans run it right there. Franciscan missionaries have been there for over 100 years. And the school I was at was actually founded by St. Catherine Drexel in 1902. I was going to say 4, but then it didn't make sense. Okay, so Hosea 2:14. I put it up there because that was this banner, which was up most of the year in the church. Actually, I think almost all of it. Well, most of the ordinary time, I think Father Patrick keeps it up there. And it's, I will lead you into the desert and I'll speak to your heart. Okay? Oh my gosh. Was that ever true? Okay? Because I can't even say enough of how much, you know, that is what happened as I went down there for 2 years. So just, I put that up there because that is kind of the essence, walk in beauty, yes, but now the essence of my experience down there. I will lead you into the desert and I'll lead you into the desert and speak to your heart. So now, how did I get down there? Before we get into the beauty and creation, beauty and friendship and those things. Went down with Mercy Volunteer Corps. Okay, well, both of us did. So we went down with Mercy Volunteer Corps. I'm going to put a little plug in there for service. Okay, so this is their mission statement. In partnership with the Sisters of Mercy, lay women and men of Mercy Volunteer Corps enter into relationship with people who are economically poor and marginalized. In the spirit of mutuality, volunteers cultivate mercy and justice in the world by embracing compassionate service, social justice, spirituality, and a simple lifestyle and community. Those 4 tenets were pounded into our heads. You know, you got it, okay? But again, you can still see this idea of this, you know, you're working in relationship. Ooh, this is cool, like that walk in beauty. You're working all interconnectedness, okay? So, very quickly, compassionate service. This was one, I just put up there some of the pictures from school. That was my class, one of my classes my first year, and then these are Christmas pageant, and then just day at the chapel. I don't know, we were singing, so, okay? But obviously my service was working with children in the schools. Stacy was at St. Michael's Special Education School, where she was a nurse. So a couple of the other 3 volunteers that were living in the house with myself were nurses, or Michelle was kind of all around. She did basically everything they needed at the school. So basically you're kind of sent with this volunteer program and you're doing some sort of service, and I was teaching simple lifestyle and community. Here's where we lived the first year, here's where I lived the second year in the trailer park. So I'll come back to this with the simply lifestyle. And there was the 4 of us. That was actually, so I lived with 3 women, yes, I know. Okay. So 3 women in the house the first year. All very different beings, and we will bring that back, and I'll share that again when we come to beauty and friendship and suffering in a good way. And then spirituality. So then there's also this kind of spirituality where we share spirituality nuts with one another. So they expect you to do spirituality, which is another great part of the program. And social justice. There's one of my kindergartners, Tayden. Well, he's a first grader now. Oh, he's a good kid. Crazy though. So, just a little bit about, that was a little bit about Mercy Volunteer Corps, of how I got down there in the first place. So, now, beauty and creation. How did I see beauty and creation? So I'm going to take, again, the pilgrimage beauty and transmit it into mine. Okay? All these pictures, okay, are, well, let's see. This was about a 30-minute hike, or an hour hike behind my trailer, the second year I was there. So it's a canyon with ruins in it. This was right outside our house one night. The sun sets and sun rises every single day. Right there in your face. The sun shines almost all the time. I made the mistake of looking at the weather for it last week, and it was sunny and 65% of the day. So, and then this was, 2 hours one way. This was an hour drive another way where we went hiking. This was right outside where Stacy lived this last year in Fort Defiance, and this was again right over there too. So I mean, you go 30 minutes one way, 30 minutes that way. You're seeing these canyons, these red rocks. Vastly different than the beauty here in the Midwest. Don't get me wrong, it's beautiful here. Just went to Devil's Lake not too long ago, and man, that is beautiful. I've never been there, okay? But this was a different sense. And I want to share a couple stories just because I like telling stories, okay? And these were 2 especially prominent beauty and creation spots for myself. Window Rock, right there. Do you get why it's called Window Rock? Okay. So, this is both spiritual places for the Navajoans themselves. This is Canyon de Sheda. So both places that have a lot of history in the culture. I don't know fully too much about them. I should have researched that a little bit more, but I didn't. So, but I do, I just know that they are both very important places. There is a code talker monument here, which I don't know if any of you know who the code talkers are, but from World War II is when they were used. The Navajo were used heavily in terms of not being code talkers. Okay, so like they were able to speak so that we couldn't. You get what I'm saying. So both of these though, this one, man, every time I would go to Window Rock, it was right there, about 10 minutes. Well, actually, a 15-minute walk from where I lived the first year, and then about a 5-10 minute drive from where I lived the second year. And every time I went there, it was that sense of if I was having a bad day or if I hadn't. That was the best thing about being there. Is if it's so overwhelming at times, it was. All I had to do was go 20 minutes one way or walk 5 minutes this way, and I was completely arrested by the creation around me, the beauty around me, and this idea of the rich history of what's in this land and everything like that. And I was immediately taken aback and said, Jake, none of this matters. You are doing what you're called to be doing here for God, and you just need to keep doing it, and keep doing it with love. And it was like, both of these places had a huge impact on that. I don't know how many times I went hiking there. A lot. And Canyon de Chelly was about an hour or 15-minute drive. But again, it was like a mini Grand Canyon. And it was the coolest thing because you could go down and then there's ruins at the bottom of these ruins that are from thousands of years ago. I mean, it's just built into like the side of these canyons. Like, how do people live there? I don't know. But just this whole idea. It just completely takes you out of it, and out of yourself, and makes you want to share with others just the fact of how awesome God is in terms of creation. Last thing about creation, I also attempted to climb the 4 sacred mountains. So you might have, in that creation story, you might have heard me mention the 4 sacred mountains. So the 4 sacred mountains of the Navajo are right up here. So here's the north, Hesperus Peak, then. Yeah, that is the north, right? Yeah. And the east would be Blanca Peak. So it's kind of more like a 2 and 2. It's not really a direct compass. Sorry, guys. Okay. But and then the south, Mount Taylor, and over here you got the San Francisco Peaks outside of Flagstaff. I attempted to climb 3. I successfully only made it to the top of 1, unfortunately. Okay, and it was the shortest one because that's also another suffering story. Because my experience with the other 2 was quite unique in the sense, this is at the top of one of them, Mount Taylor, the shortest one. And this is on another one when we didn't think there was going to be snow, and then we got up in the morning and realized that there's feet of snow at the top of the mountain. So then we tried to climb up and we couldn't quite make it. So we tried that one twice, and both times I had to share these. They're actually videos. Only about 30 seconds. This is kind of a fun time. Okay. So both of the times, you probably might be able to hear it, but you'll get the gist of it. We, again, just to keep in mind the idea of beauty. This is why I'm sharing this with you. Okay. So we get to the top of this one, and we realize we can't go up any further because we're sliding down the mountain. Okay. But hopefully, if I zoom out, I think I do in this picture. I zoom out, and you can see this. You can see you saw a glimpse of it, Look at Jerry, he's like climbing up, oh my gosh. Okay? So, just this idea, so that was the first time we tried this mountain. But again, what an amazing, oh, there you go. Well, there she goes, sliding down. And I'll touch back on these 2 later in terms of friendship and how it helps create. But then watch this. We get there, this is in May. We get there, and clearly we were not ready for mountain climbing. But, these mountains, it was just an amazing thing because, again, this idea we could go 2 hours away, 3 hours away, and get up and go climb a mountain and be able to see out and be like, wow, thank you, God. This idea of thank you for this opportunity, thank you for this opportunity to share and serve you where we are. And so that was the coolest thing about it. So beauty and creation. Beauty and friendship. Good, I'm good on time, okay. So, these were the 3 lovely women I got to share a house with for a year. Okay, one of them is back there, so you might know her, you might not. Okay, but she's a wonderful woman. I have to say that. But I want to share just one story in particular about this group of the four of us, and that is the fact that if you really want to get to know people and grow in terms of what it means to sacrifice and what it means to stand by people, then you need to share something like our first night in Arizona. And that was, we get there at 10:30 at night, we're on the reservation, we go into this house, and it was not ready for us. There were bugs this size, on the ground that were not cleaned out. There are blinds down, there are mattresses piled up with interesting stains all over them. You've got things in the box, nothing's set up, nothing's clean, and we're in this neighborhood where there are dogs everywhere, res dogs, a serious thing. There are over 250,000 or something stray dogs on the reservation, on the Navajo reservation. Sad thing for animal lovers out there, and I'm an animal lover, but it's an interesting thing that is a separate thing too. Okay, so, but we get there, and we're just, kind of like, what did we get ourselves into, And I think there's a little bit crying on everyone's part that first night. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm in this house with 3 women, I don't know. I think we actually ended up, all 4 of us, putting our beds in the same room and saying, we're sleeping by each other. We're too frightened to go. And there was 3 rooms, we thought there was going to be 4, but there's only 3, so now someone's going to have to share. Well, obviously it's not going to be me. It was just this extreme sense of you're thrown in. And it's like, okay, God, we need to trust in you 100%. And the friendships that we were able to create immediately from that first night were, I think, unbelievable. Mary Rose, this woman right here, I still remember, we're all starting to unpack, and maybe it was that night or it was the next day, and all of a sudden she just starts throwing on these Chris Tomlin songs. Our God is an awesome God, or our God is greater. And I'm like, really? She's singing them out loud, and I'm like, come on, I'm on the verge of tears. Thinking, what am I doing? But then, again, the opportunity in terms of friendship to share in meals. We were forced, not forced, but that was what we were told to do in our volunteer program. To share a meal one night a week, and then spirituality where somebody leads just some sort of reflection. And what an opportunity to see the beauty in one another in terms of where we all come from. So Stacy's from Tinley Park, Illinois, south of Chicago. I'm from Winona, Minnesota. Mary Rose is from Ohio. That's really bad. Anyways, and Deshae was from Washington, D.C. So, oh my gosh, vastly different upbringings, all of us. And, and to come together and share that, and I think a lot of you have probably experienced this in terms of even just living with people in college. I mean, to some extent, if you've ever done something like that. But the beauty that you experience there, and the way that God has shown to you through people standing behind you, there's no way I would have gotten through those first few weeks of that school year, of where I was thrown into this classroom with no curriculum, I had to find my textbooks. They were in closets all over campus, that kind of stuff. But I knew that those 3 girls were going to be there with smiles on their face after school, And that is exactly what got me through it. So that was friendship. Then the awesome thing was there's also this wider friendship of all the teachers at school, the choir that I had at church where we kind of just all volunteers, just kind of came on Sunday and would sing on Sundays. And then we got these chances to go on trips together, where we would go to national parks, teach all the teachers at school. Let's all go to Arches National Park, go camping. Let's go climb a mountain and not be prepared. Let's go to the prom, the high school prom, and outnumber the students. It's all young, recent college grads, or we're all young and from all over the country. And that's the cool thing about it. And so, one final thing is I wanted to put on here 3 other things that we did, I already mentioned camping, on a regular basis. We did game game night we instituted last year again at the trailer I lived in with another guy last year from the high school, another teacher, where we did a game night every Wednesday night. So all the teachers live in that trailer park. I think I showed you that picture. So there's 13 trailers. And so we would just, you know, I think we would have gone crazy. I was crazy if I was ever in my trailer for too long. So I think me just being a social being, I needed something. So I said, let's do game night every Wednesday. And yeah, sometimes I didn't really want to do it. But then you get everybody there and you're like, this is awesome. You know, building camaraderie and just hanging out with people that I probably wouldn't hang out with on a normal basis. Okay? So we did game night on a regular basis. Then we would spend almost all holidays. This is Easter this last year. Okay? We would spend almost all holidays together where we would go, because a lot of us are too far away from home. Normally we would have a few sets of parents that would come and visit, or like family members. My brother was here, one of my older brothers came and visited this year, and I think we had another couple sets of parents. So we got this group of like 25, 30 people. We had, you know, a turkey and a couple other things, and for Thanksgiving or Easter we got a ham, and it's just a unique sense of friendship, because you look around and you go, even if I don't really understand or get you as a person sometimes, you're here doing this service. You're here giving up a year of your life at minimum. There are some guys that have been there for multiple years, 5, 6 years, and you just get I just remember at those gatherings, I just kind of sometimes had to step back and go, this is awesome. This is exactly what God is calling us to do. You know, in terms of getting out there and giving up of ourselves to share in community and to share with those like on the reservation who are very much unseen, especially in this country. Last thing we did that I loved was both of our friend Ashley. I talked to her, you know, last fall, and we were like, man, it'd be really fun to do some sort of like spirituality thing with everybody, because we had it with our program the first year, but then I didn't have anything on a regular basis where I was like talking about my faith with people. And so I was like, let's get a group together. So every Monday night then, we started this group called Waffle, which was what about faith and life? So there's this idea of, it was a potluck, you know, and we would just come and somebody would have a topic, you know, we really talked about it beforehand, and we pretty much kept it on a regular basis for the rest of the year. And to think that, you know, there's always stuff going on in school, but at least we'd have, you know, 8 to 10 people show up every time, and it was kind of like this, you know, Mustard Seed, or like a group upstairs, or Alpha Omega Unplugged. You know, just this idea of camaraderie, these young adults all coming together to share in friendship and this search for deeper meaning in our faith and questioning and that kind of thing. And that was some of the coolest things in terms of encountering beauty in friendship. And then, this was an example of our game nights. You can't really hear anything, but we're playing Monopoly Deal. Has anyone ever heard of Monopoly Deal? No. So this is our trailer. Everyone's just kind of hanging out. I would take a lot of videos sometimes. I just like kind of documenting things. Then you got Jeff on the floor, just kind of hanging out. But it's just this idea of, I mean, how cool! Like, there's just all these young adults that are hanging out on the reservation, teaching or doing other things, and then they, you know, getting together to just share life. So that was one thing. Beauty in creation, beauty in friendship, and then finally beauty in suffering. Okay? So there was enough suffering on the last 2 years that I have experienced in the first 22 years of my life. In terms of personally, and in terms of just witnessing too. And a lot of it was for myself spiritual suffering in terms of, okay, I don't have an awesome college community. I would say Nova College, a Catholic campus where you're surrounded, if you want to be, by other Catholics, by other people who, I mean, like you guys are a lot of the community here at St. Paul's has. There's none of that. I mean, you go out there and you're like, you're on the reservation, you know, and stuff, so that was kind of huge. But I wanted to share just a couple things in terms of beauty and how I found beauty in suffering. First of all, I taught 6th grade, and my first year. And there's my classroom. Look at those kids. They're so great. Now they're 8th graders. They were quite a class. I got them, and I remember the teachers immediately telling me, they're quite a class. You know? I was like, every class, like, no, this one's really good, guy. And I was like, okay, let's go for it. And man, did we go back and forth some days. I did go to school for elementary ed, so this was right down my alley, luckily. And so I did kind of know what I was doing. So, but I still remember, I'll talk about, I have a couple names on there. 2 kids in particular. But first of all, the suffering I witnessed in these kids, even at the age of 6th grade and even younger, as I taught younger grades as well, in science that first year and then also in music last year, was just this idea of their constant understanding, or rather look on themselves of, I'm a res kid, I am always going to be a res kid, you know, I'm not going to really live up to much because I'm a res kid, you know, and like, really, that's what it is. Yeah, I might go off to school, I might like graduate high school, I'll graduate high school, but then I'll go off to school for a year and then come back because I won't be able to handle it, because that's what happens most of the time. And so all these different things, and majority of them come from extremely broken families. And the thing that I had to remind myself sometimes was, I was at St. Michael Indian School, so a school that is a private school. So in fact, families do pay tuition to go there. There are scholarships, but they do pay tuition. So these students are coming from a little bit more of the privileged families in the area. So maybe a little bit more structure in their home life. But still, the vast majority of them, parents aren't together. They're living with their grandparents, or they're living, I mean, mind you, part of that is culture as well. But they come from these extremely hard situations. And I remember who's more resi, that competition, and it was just always interesting of like, what does that even mean? Like, who's more resi? Who's more, who dresses more traditional? You know, kind of sometimes that would be the case. And it was always kind of I struggled with that because I went down there actually hoping to learn a lot from the students about their culture. But so much of the students don't know much about their culture because the generations are losing more and more every time. The grandparents right now, I think a lot of them are still very much there. So a lot of the students, you always knew who lived with their grandparents because they would know a lot more about their culture. But it's that middle generation of probably the generation right above myself and ourselves, probably the majority of us here. The right above it has kind of lost. The Western influence has come. And so it's kind of this interesting, we don't know who we are, but we kind of want to know who we are because we want to have this separate nation and this separate identity because we're proud of it, but we don't really know what it is. You know, so it was such an interesting thing. And 2 students that I struggled with constantly, Lawrence and Miles, love them to death. But man, did they come in. There were a couple times where, I just recall, especially with Lawrence, just having 1 or 2 talks into the year where he's this tough kid leading the crowd with the boys, Lawrence and Miles, both of them. And then you find out, as you talk to him, Lawrence, what's going on? Like, why are you acting like that today? He, just starts crying. This 6th grade boy, who, is acting all tough during the school year, during the school day, around his friends. But you find out, Mom, like, she really yells at me, like, she's really upset. I haven't seen my dad in, like, 3 months, and, like, all this stuff, and it's just like, oh my gosh, what do you do? And so much of it for myself, as I'll come back to and constantly say, was, well, I can be there and be this, what was luckily for myself in elementary school, was be this, hopefully, good role model of a male character, because a lot of them don't have that, in terms of a male character who they can look up to, these little boys, they're 6th grade boys, they wouldn't want me to call them little, and it was crazy how over the year to just see how I really struggled with the boys at the beginning of the year, but then by the end of the year I was struggling with the girls. It was like Christmas time, after Christmas break, it switched to girls. I mean, it might have been going into 7th grade girls, I don't want to know, I don't even know. But like the boys and I, by the end of the year, were like, what's up? Like, yeah, let's hang out. And they're like, yeah, whatever you want, Mr. D. Sure, sounds good. All right, cool. And it was just so crazy to see that transition, but even the girls, by the end, they were respecting. And one kind of cool thing about it was just recently when word got around to all the folks down in Arizona that Stacy and I were engaged, because it just happened ago, I got an email from who is now teaching them in 8th grade, the teacher, who said, hi Jake, like, you don't know me, she's actually a Mercy volunteer now this year. And she said, when I told the boys, or when the boys heard about that you were engaged, they immediately, Lawrence and Cameron, another one, came up and said that they wanted to be your best man and your groomsman. And the rest of them will, all be your groomsmen, and then a couple of them will be your ushers, like Lawrence, or like Miles, and then whatever will be your ushers. And I was like, oh my gosh. But like, what a cool thing to be able to think about it in the sense of, I'm here, I was there for just a certain amount of time, but I was able to, and I'm not tooting my own horn, I'm just saying, you know, like, I realized after a while, I can't really physically do much besides literally be with them and just say, I'm here, you can do whatever you want to do, buddy. You just got to do it. And that's what they had to hear over and over again. And that's exactly what I put on here too. We also had the opportunity, say, tonight to coach the track team in the high school. And man, was that a different experience. Just to coach, their idea of a team was just so different. I think, you know, us, it's always about win, 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 all this stuff. Like, yeah, and all that stuff. And they even, like, I was on cross country. I was never on track, but just the camaraderie that you build there and the idea of cheering for one another was not there. And it was just an interesting kind of thing with these kids. Again, that idea of we're res kids, we're not going to amount to much, but it was just constant, this battle of like, you can do this. Like, just do it. And I think it's any high school youth, really, but especially with them. And so it was just an opportunity, and I remember even the last year I didn't coach, but a few of the guys and girls who were on the track team the first year when I did coach, they would see me in the halls or something and would come up and just say like, you know, like, thanks for coaching us last year. Like, it was just good to, like, we were like, you were one of the best coaches we've ever had. And I was like, what? How did I even know what I was doing? And I think it was just the idea of, I wanted them to be the best they could be. And not to say that they don't hear that much, but I don't know if they really do hear that much. You know, that idea, even from the coaches that do come in, and just like, you are a good person. You're going to do well. And you can decide what your future holds. You know, that kind of thing. And then this last year, I'm going to kind of keep going so we can wrap it up here. Again, similar thing. I was able to teach music. So I was an employee this last year, so I was no longer a volunteer. I said, hey, do you want me to teach music? You don't have music. I like music. I'm a teacher. Should I put them together? And they said, sure, go for it. I said, oh, okay. So I started a music program. It was quite a whirlwind. So K through 8. So I now was able to, I went up from 30 students to 250 students that I didn't know the names of. And it was like, okay, I don't know your name, but you look like this kid. I don't know. So, but again, it was just crazy to see how these students, first of all, didn't know much of anything about music besides what was on the radio. They didn't, what's a trumpet? You know, like, what? You're in 8th grade, you don't know what a trumpet is? I never said that like that. No, but in my head I'm like, boom, you know? And it's just this idea of like, limited, and their culture, and just to be able to share that suffering with them and to be there in terms of, I'm here to literally, I think I entitled one of the concerts we did, I said, what's out there in music? Because that was literally like my focus the whole year was what's out there. Because just broadening their eyes to the fact that like, oh my gosh, you know, there's so much more out there than I see, or that I actually am told that there is, I think, too. And so, there were a few students, again, I just threw a couple up there that have stuck with me. Andre and Kai, both second graders. Both crazy kids in a good way. But, you know, again, just that male role model I was able to be for them, it was just so unique to understand by the end of the year, to see how they would, yeah, not on purpose, they're second graders, but like kind of on purpose, disrespect me in class. But then, you know, later on down the year, I mean, who's the first person that they would want to come up and talk to? Myself. And I'm like, what? Like, why do you act like this now? Can't you be nicer in class? You know? But it's evident that like they understand, they're making this connection. This guy is like telling me I can be something that I feel like this is second grade, you know, like they probably don't even consciously know. Yeah, or like that kind of thing. But like what we can do as human beings, they're kind of starting to understand that. And it was just so cool to see that. And then to me, a little kindergartner, she was the cutest thing in the world. And again, this beauty and suffering, I think she is the epitome of what I would say in that. Because she's this kindergartner. And like, if you want to see beauty, look at a kindergartner who's loving life because they're just smiling from ear to ear. And I just remember every day I would see her, she's giggling and smiling, and she'd just be like, "Hi, Mr. D," you know, like that kind of thing. And I was like, to me, you're great. Like, I just can't handle you some days, you know. And then one day she's not happy, and I'm like, what? Like, what's going on here? So I asked her after class, and she's like, I haven't seen my dad. He's in jail. Like, I'm not gonna see him. He's going to jail again. I'm not gonna see him for 6 months. It's like, you're in kindergarten. I don't know what to do. You know, she's like, can you just give me a hug? And I'm like, absolutely. You know? And she hugged me for probably 2 minutes straight. You know, and then Anessa, my friend Anessa, who was a kindergarten teacher, comes in and she sees, she's like, you know, and I was like, but just that idea of this little girl doesn't even know how much of an influence she had on me, in a sense of just, I mean, she's had this, probably her dad she's been suffering